The legend of Bigfoot has long lingered on the periphery of human understanding, an enigmatic figure lurking within the shadowy depths of dense forests and remote wilderness. From the misty expanses of the Pacific Northwest to the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas, tales of a towering, ape-like being have echoed through time, whispered by indigenous cultures and immortalized in modern media. Known by various names: Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie, Bigfoot transcends cultural boundaries, captivating imaginations and sparking debates about the boundaries of our knowledge. But what is Bigfoot? Is it a relic hominid? A remnant of our evolutionary past, lurking in the uncharted corners of the world? Or is it a myth, born from the depth of human imagination, fueled by a primal fear of the unknown? As we delve deeper into the labyrinth forests of legend and lore, we confront not only the creature itself, but also the complexities of belief, skepticism, and the enduring quest for truth. This is the history of Bigfoot and Yeti. Renowned anthropologist David Daegling suggested that the legends of this large, hairy humanoid existed before the term Bigfoot was coined. Even the Vikings were said to have come across this beast, and it is well known that the Native American Indians had a special relationship with Bigfoot, a trusting relationship, which paints the animal as a protector, a friend rather than a foe. Variations in these stories exist, not only between families within the same community, but also regionally. Ecologist Robert Pyle noted that numerous cultures have stories of giant human-like creatures, and this indicates a universal desire within humans to believe in larger-than-life creatures. Different cultures have different names for these creatures, often translating into terms like forest man or hairy man. Chief Michelle of the Unlaka Panics tribe in British Columbia shared a story with a folklorist by the name of Charles Hill Trout in 1898, in which he mentions a creature with a local dialect name that, when translated, means the benign-faced one. The Lumi tribe also recount stories of their interactions with Bigfoot, and there are very general similarities between the various accounts from members within that tribe. However, there is variations between families in what they say the behaviour of Bigfoot was. Some cultures mention these creatures as being much more menacing, like the Kwikwi and the Steha, nocturnal creatures that children are warned against mentioning their names, because in their folklore, if a person mentions their name, then these creatures are somehow spiritually alerted to this, and they then come looking for the person who mentioned their name, and they take that person away. In many of these cultures, the stories mention the tribes actually killing these beasts, However, no bones or bodies of these creatures have ever been found. One of the reasons that we have not found the bones of these creatures is perhaps because in many of these tribal stories, the Bigfoot was seen as being a mystical being, a spiritual being. So perhaps the bones of the creature were kept so that they could be used in various tribal ceremonies. The other reason would be that there is nutritional value in bones. So many of these tribes would have used the bones as a base, as a stock for soups and broths and other liquid-based foods to get the most nutritional value out of a successful hunt. Even today, people use and boil down the bones of animals to use as a base for soups and broths. So it's perfectly reasonable to assume that these tribes would have done the same when they captured any animal. This is an important point because the main reason that skeptics surrounding Bigfoot are confident in their view that Bigfoot does not exist or never did exist is because we have not found the bones of these creatures. But because the bones had value, that might suggest a reason why we've never discovered them.
In 1847, the Canadian painter Paul Kane, who was originally from Ireland, documented stories shared by the Native Americans about a group of wild men living on the peak of Mount St. Helens in southern Washington state. These wild men, known as skookums, were said to be cannibalistic. However, there have been less threatening versions of these tales also. During the same period, a Protestant missionary named R. Walker recorded stories among the Indians living near Spokane, Washington, about the existence of giants. According to the Indians, these giants resided on and around nearby mountains and would occasionally steal fish from the fishermen's nets when they were hungry. In the 1920s, J.W. Burns, an Indian agent, collected local legends and published them in a series of articles in Canadian newspapers. These stories were shared with him by the Styles people of the Jaharis and other tribes. The Styles and the other tribes in the region firmly believed in the existence of the Sasquatch and never doubted its reality. They were even offended by those who claimed that these figures were fictional. According to the accounts from Styles, the Sasquatch would avoid encounters with white men and spoke the Lillooet language, which was spoken by the people of Port Douglas in British Columbia near Harrison Lake. These stories were republished in 1940. Burns adopted the term Sasquatch from the Halkomen language and used it in his writings to describe a hypothetical single type of creature depicted in the local stories. Grover Krantz and Jeffrey H. Bourne, both Bigfoot enthusiasts, believed that Bigfoot could be a primitive population of Gigantopithecus. However, all known fossils of Gigantopithecus have been found in Asia, not in the Americas. Bourne suggested that many kinds of animals migrated across the Bering Land Bridge So it is possible that Gigantopithecus did as well. Fossils of Gigantopithecus have not been found in the Americas, only teeth and mandibles, which leaves uncertainty about its migration. Krantz argued that Gigantopithecus could have been bipedal based on the shape of its mandible, but the relevant part of the mandible to prove this theory has never been found in any fossils. Another viewpoint is that Gigantopithecus was quadrupedal due to its enormous size, which would have made it difficult for it to have an entirely bipedal walk. Anthropologist Matt Cartmill disagrees with the hypothesis that Gigantopithecus is Bigfoot, stating that it is not a hominin and may not even be a crown group hominoid. However, there is physical evidence suggesting that Bigfoot is an upright biped with unique hominin traits such as buttocks and a long snout with permanently abducted hallux. These traits are not found in other mammals or bipeds, making it unlikely that Gigantopithecus would have evolved them in parallel. Despite conflicting views on its identity, there are those who advocate for Bigfoot to receive a scientific classification. In 2013, the non-governmental organization Zoobank, which is recognized by zoologists for assigning species names, approved the registration requests for the species name Homo sapiens cognatus to be used for the reputed hominid commonly known as Bigfoot.
The question about the fate of Bigfoot as a biological species is a very complicated one. The reason it is complicated is because there are so many variants within the Bigfoot world. So, for example, in the United States, you have the Sasquatch. When you are in the Himalayas, you have the Yeti. And the question would be, at what point in the variance or in the variation would one of these different types of Bigfoot become a different species? Now, in biology, the definition of a species is whether or not one creature can mate with another creature and produce a viable offspring. And by viable offspring, what we mean is offspring that can mate and reproduce itself and therefore continue on the species. So, for example, a horse can mate with a donkey. However, that produces a mule, and mules are not able to reproduce. So therefore, a mule is not a viable species. It is not a viable offspring. So the question would be, would a Sasquatch be able to mate with a Yeti, and what would the offspring's capabilities be in terms of being able to reproduce? If a Yeti could reproduce with a Sasquatch, then technically speaking, that would mean that the Yeti is part of the same species. If it turned out that they produced offspring that were not able to reproduce, then you would have to say that the Yeti is a different species. The problem with this is there is no way to tell, because we do not have a live Bigfoot and a live Yeti to be able to get them to mate in a zoo and be able to see if they can produce that viable offspring. And that is the problem. If we say that Bigfoot is a species, if we accept its existence, or that it existed at one time, then we have this opening of this very complex biological can of worms. In Himalayan culture and folklore, the Yeti was seen as being a fearsome creature, and the same is true in Western culture. However, the name used more commonly is that of the abominable snowman. Now, in the West, the popularity of the Yeti increased massively in the late 19th century. However, despite that, the scientific world did not see the Yeti as being a real creature or species. Instead, they viewed it as the product of complex tribal mythology. The word Yeti comes from the Tibetan word ya, which means rock or rocky place. A man by the name of Frank Smythe Sherpas made a written statement in 1937, claiming that if you saw the Yeti, you would either die instantly or die shortly afterwards. So this gave the creature a mythological element to it, a mythological power, similar to that of, say, Medusa in The Clash of the Titans, where one look from her and you turn to stone. It was a nice story, and it's always interesting to attribute a mythological power to a creature. However, this did not help the Yeti get classified as a real biological species, because it took what could have been a real biological species and brought it into the space of myth, which made it more likely that the scientific community would not take the Yeti seriously as being a possible real animal.
The term abominable snowman was coined in 1921, the same year that Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Bury led the British Mount Everest reconnaissance expedition. In his book, Mount Everest, The Reconnaissance, Howard Bury recounts his journey. Within the pages of this 1921 publication, Howard Bury shares a story about crossing the Lapka La. During this crossing, he discovered footprints that he believed were likely to have been made by a grey wolf. These footprints left double tracks in the soft snow, resembling those of a barefooted man. He mentions that these footprints belonged to the legendary creature known as Wild Man of the Snows, referred to by the locals as Mito Kangmi. Mito translates to man-bear, while Kangmi translates to snowman. The term abominable snowman came into use when Henry Newman, writing under the pen name Kim, interviewed the baggage bearers of the Everest reconnaissance expedition upon their return to Darjeeling. Newman mistakenly translated the word Mito as abominable and used it in his account. Some speculate that this was done for artistic purposes, but the term remained nevertheless. In 1932, the Journal of the Asiatic Society of Bengal published an account by B.H. Hodgson detailing his experiences in northern Nepal. Hodgson's local guides spotted a tall bipedal creature covered in long dark hair, which quickly fled in fear. Hodgson later concluded that it may have been an orangutan. In 1899, Lawrence Waddell's book, Among the Himalayas, included an early record of supposed deity footprints. Waddell's guides described a large ape-like creature that left these footprints in the snow. Waddell himself believed the prints were made by a bear. Despite hearing numerous tales of bipedal creatures, Waddell found no authentic cases among the Tibetans that he interviewed. Upon conducting a cursory examination, it consistently boiled down to something that someone had heard about.
The frequency of reports regarding the Yeti significantly increased during the early 20th century, when individuals from the Western world began their endeavours to conquer the numerous mountains in the region. Occasionally, these adventurers were claimed to have discovered peculiar tracks and witnessed strange creatures. In 1925, a photographer and member of the Royal Geographical Society named N.A. Tumbazi stated that he had encountered a creature at an altitude of approximately 15,000 feet near the Zumu Glacier. Tumbazi later recounted that he observed the creature for approximately 1 minute. Tumbazi unequivocally asserted that the figure he saw resembled a human, walking upright, occasionally pausing to pluck some dwarf rhododendron bushes. It appeared dark against the snow. To the best of his knowledge, wore no clothing. Roughly 2 hours later, Tumbazi and his companions descended the mountain and stumbled upon footprints. Left by the creature, these prints were described as being similar in shape to those of a man, but measuring only 6 to 7 inches in length and 4 inches in width. There is no doubt that these prints, in my opinion, belonged to a bipedal creature. However, Tumbazi didn't believe in the Yeti. In fact, he thought what he actually saw was a hermit, although this isn't actually reported very often.
Western interest in the Yeti experienced a significant surge in the 1950s and the 1960s. While attempting to ascend Mount Everest in 1951, Eric Earl Shipton captured photographs of several large footprints in the snow at an altitude of approximately 22,000 feet above sea level. These photographs have been the subject of intense debate and scrutiny. Some argue that they provide the most compelling evidence of the Yeti's existence, while others contend that the prints were simply left by a mundane creature whose shape was distorted by the melting snow. Peter Byrne, a researcher of Bigfoot, claimed to have discovered a Yeti footprint in 1948 in northern Sikkim, India, near the Zemu Glacier, while on vacation from his assignment in the Royal Air Force in India. In 1953, Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary reported sighting large footprints while climbing Mount Everest. Hillary desired to confirm the unreliability of the Yeti reports. In his initial autobiography, Tenzing expressed his belief that the Yeti was a massive ape, despite having never seen it himself, while his father claimed to have seen it twice. However, in his second autobiography, he admitted to becoming more skeptical about the existence of the Yeti. The request to investigate the matter came from Dr. Melba S. Ketchum, a veterinarian and lead scientist of the Sasquatch Genome Project. Following the publication of the groundbreaking study on novel North American hominins, Ketchum's request was detailed in an article published in 2013, an issue of the De Novo Journal of Science. The study analysed 111 samples of blood, tissue, hair, and other specimens believed to have come from the elusive Sasquatch. Zoobank, an adjunct to the International Commission on Zoological Nomenclature, was involved in the project. The Sasquatch Genome Project is a collaborative effort involving scientists from various public and academic laboratories. The next step would involve obtaining a DNA sample from Homo sapiens cognates for inclusion from GenBank, a well-respected DNA repository. Dmitry Bayanov, chairman of the Smolin Seminar on Hominology at the Darwin Museum in Moscow, Russia, said, "All researchers versed in this science know that Bigfoot is a mammal and not a myth because of the female's conspicuous mammae. All know that Bigfoot is a primate because of its sole dermal ridges, a diagnostic characteristic of primates. All hominologists, respectful of logic and the current clarification and classification of primates, know that Bigfoot is a non-sapiens hominid because of its non-human way of life and bipedalism. I think that one of the greatest scientific results of the 20th century was the discovery of relict hominids, or homins for short, popularly known as Abominable Snowman, Yeti, Yeren, Almas, Almasti, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, etc. The entire monologist community experienced a rediscovery of knowledge that had been familiar to Western naturalists since ancient times until the mid-18th century. During this period, Carl Linnaeus classified wild bipedal primates as cavemen, Homo troglodytes, and Homo silvestris, which is the scientific term for woodmen or forest men. Even though so many people claim to have seen Bigfoot, only a limited number of formal scientific studies have been conducted. Evidence such as the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film has not provided any supportive data of scientific merit. Great apes have not been found in the fossil records of the Americas, and no remains of Bigfoot have ever been discovered or identified. A cultural anthropologist at the University of Buffalo called Phillips Stevens summarized the scientific consensus by saying, "It defies all logic that there is a population of these things sufficient to keep them going. What it takes to maintain any species, especially a long-lived species, is you must have a breeding population. That requires a substantial number spread out over a fairly wide area so that they can find sufficient food and shelter to keep them hidden from investigators. We may not know any exact numbers or have any foolproof methods of describing Sasquatch, but there is an abundance of fools out there who love to try. Let the hoaxing begin.
It certainly makes sense what Phillips Stevens said. In order for any species to continue, there has to be a community of them. There has to be enough of them so that they can successfully breed and keep the species going. And if there were a community of them out there somewhere, then surely by now somebody would have come across them. Especially when you consider the fact that the human population is increasing so dramatically, which is resulting in the potential habitats for big feet to reduce. And as these habitats reduce, there's just more chance that humans are going to come across them. Especially when we consider now, it's much easier to get evidence of Sasquatches because we all carry a pretty good camera on us at the moment on our mobile phone. And don't forget, we could also follow these creatures with drones. And we also have satellite imaging, which is capable of following any creature. So the chances of there being a community out there that is large enough for them to survive, yet not too large that they're able to evade us humans successfully, I think is getting ever smaller all the time. That does not mean that Bigfoot necessarily has never existed. But I think in this modern world where it would be so easy for somebody to pull out their mobile phone and capture undeniable evidence, I think it's becoming less likely all the time.
Author Jerome Clark argued that the Jacko affair, involving newspaper reports in 1884 of an ape-like creature captured in British Columbia, was indeed a hoax. John Green's research revealed that numerous British Columbia newspapers viewed the alleged capture with suspicion, with the Mainland Guardian of New Westminster, British Columbia, going as far as to call it absurd.
The evidence supporting the existence of a large ape-like creature has often been attributed to delusions or hoaxes rather than actual sightings of a real creature. In a 1996 article published by USA Today, Washington State zoologist John Crane stated there is no concrete evidence for the existence of a Bigfoot, as all available data has been fabricated. Additionally, scientists point out that Bigfoot is alleged to inhabit regions that are atypical for a large non-human primate, such as temperature latitudes in the northern hemisphere. All recognized apes are found in the tropical regions of Africa and Asia. However, renowned primatologist Jane Goodall expressed her belief in the existence of Bigfoot during an interview with National Public Radio, stating that she is certain they exist. Tom Biscardi, a well-known Bigfoot enthusiast and CEO of Searching for Bigfoot Inc., has made several appearances in the paranormal radio show Coast to Coast AM. And in July 2005, Biscardi confidently claimed that his group was close to capturing a Bigfoot in Happy Camp, California. However, just a month later, he announced plans for a pay-per-view event to showcase a captured Bigfoot, only to later admit that that was no such creature. In 2008, Rick Dyer and Matthew Whitten claimed to have found a dead Sasquatch in a Georgia forest, prompting Biscardi to investigate despite receiving $50,000 from Searching for Bigfoot Inc. The alleged Bigfoot body turned out to be a hoax, with a hollow head, fake hair and rubber feet The story gained significant attention from major news networks like ABC News, CBC, Fox News, CNN, and even the BBC, but ultimately proved to be false. Diane Whitten, upon being confronted by Steve Kulls, executive director of SasquatchDetective.com, openly admitted that it was a hoax. These hoaxes sometimes had tragic consequences, as was the case within Montana. Dressed in a gorilla suit and pretending to be Bigfoot, a man was killed by a car in August 2012. Despite being the perpetrator of a previous Bigfoot hoax, Rick Tyre decided to try and fool the Bigfoot community once more in January 2014. Dyer claimed to have killed a Bigfoot creature in September 2012 near San Antonio in Texas, but stated that scientific tests, including DNA tests, 3D optical scans and body scans, have been performed on the body. According to Dyer, the results confirmed that it was indeed Bigfoot. He planned to take the body on a tour across North America in 2014, but only released photos and a video without sharing any of the tests or scan results. Dyer refused to disclose the test results or provide biological samples, claiming they were done by an undisclosed lab and couldn't be matched to any known animal. He promised to reveal the body and test at a news conference on 1st of February 2014, but failed to make the results available. After the tour, the Bigfoot body was taken to Houston. On March 28, 2014, Dyer admitted on his Facebook page that the Bigfoot corpse was an attempt to trick everyone. He had paid Chris Russell of Twisted Toy Box to manufacture the fake Bigfoot, which he named Hank. Using camel hair and latex foam, Dyer profited approximately $6,000 from the tour of his second fake Bigfoot corpse. He claimed to have killed a Bigfoot, but was too afraid to bring the actual body with him for fear of it being stolen.
In 1954, during the Daily Mail Snowman exhibition, mountaineering leader John Angelo Jackson became the first person to travel from Everest to Kanchenjunga. Along the way, he captured photographs of symbolic Yeti paintings at Tembosh Gampa in eastern Nepal. Jackson discovered and photographed numerous footprints in the snow, most of which were easily identifiable. However, there were several large footprints that could not be identified. These flattened indentations were believed to be the result of erosion and widening caused by particles and wind. On the 19th of March 1954, the Daily Mail published an article mentioning that expedition teams had obtained hair samples from what was believed to be a Yeti scalp found in the Penbosch Monastery. The hairs appeared dark brown to black in dim light and fox red in sunlight. Professor Frederick Wood Jones, an expert in human and comparative anatomy, examined the hairs. Jones took the micro photographs of the hairs and compared them to strands from known animals such as orangutans and bears. He concluded that the hairs did not come from a scalp. Jones argued that while some animals have a ridge of hair extending from the forehead to the back, no animals have a ridge running from the base of the forehead across the top of the head to the tape of the neck. Although Jones could not definitively identify the animal from which the Penbosch hares originated, he was certain that they did not come from an anthropoid ape or bear. He suggested that the hares may have come from the shoulder of a coarse-haired, hooved animal. In his 1956 book, The Long Walk, Slavomir Ravich recounted an incident during the winter of 1940 when he and a group of individuals were crossing the Himalayas. They encountered two bipedal animals that were simply shuffling around in the snow, causing a delay in their journey. Starting in 1957, Tom Slick financed multiple expeditions to investigate reports of the Yeti. In 1959, one of Slick's expeditions collected supposed Yeti feces. Upon analysis, a parasite was discovered that could not be classified. This discovery further fueled the belief in the existence of the creature. The belief was so strong that even the United States government deemed it likely enough to establish 3 rules for American expeditions searching for the Yeti. These rules included obtaining a Nepalese permit, refraining from harming the Yeti unless in self-defense, and obtaining approval from the Nepalese government for any news reporting on the discovery of the animal. In 1960, Sir Edmund Hillary led the 1960 to 1961 Silver Expedition to the Himalayas with the purpose of collecting and examining evidence of the Yeti. Hillary borrowed a supposed Yeti scalp from the Kumjung Monastery and brought it back to London. A small sample was taken for testing. Scientist Marcia Bones conducted a thorough examination of the hair and skin samples from the alleged Yeti scalp. The sample was compared to similar samples from black bears, blue bears, and a medium-sized mammal resembling a goat or antelope, known as the serow. Burns concluded that the sample was likely made from the skin of an animal closely resembling the serow, but not identical to it. It could possibly be a local variety or race of the same species, or a different but closely related species. Until the 1960s, belief in the Yeti was quite common in Bhutan, a country in South Asia. In 1966, a Bhutanese stamp was created to honour the creature. However, belief in the creature waned significantly in the 21st century. However, in 1970, a British mountaineer named Don Willens asserted to have spotted the creature while climbing the Annapurna Himalayas in north-central Nepal. Willens claimed to have witnessed the creature moving on all fours. Also in 1983, Robert L. Fleming Jr., who was a Himalayan natural history expert, went on an expedition with a man called Daniel C. Taylor, who was a Himalayan conservationist. They went on this expedition searching for the Yeti or evidence of the Yeti, and while they were there, they found curious large nests in the trees and also what they would describe as Yeti tracks in the snow.
They also interviewed many of the local villagers, and the local villagers talked a lot about two very distinct large bears who had been patrolling the area. While they were there, they also collected skulls, and they took those skulls back to the British Museum, Smithsonian Institute, and also the American Museum of Natural History. And having evaluated and tested these skulls, it was determined that these skulls belonged to the Asiatic black bear. In 2004, the editor of the journal Nature, a man by the name of Henry G., stated that he believed that the Yeti is a mythical creature that is worthy of further investigation. The reason he decided on this is because he believed the recent discovery that Homo florensis actually survived until much more recently than we thought meant that it was much more likely that there may be some truth about the existence of the Yeti. In 2007, TV presenter Josh Gates, on the programme Destination Truth, on an expedition in Nepal, found footprints that were 13 inches long and 9.8 inches wide, with 5 toes. So they took casts of these footprints and took them back for further analysis.
Idaho State University's Jeffrey Meldrum conducted an analysis of the footprints and determined that they were morphologically accurate, ruling out the possibility of them being fake or human-made. However, after further investigation of the tracks, Meldrum changed his initial conclusions. In 2009, hair samples were presented to a forensic analyst who discovered an unknown DNA sequence within the hair. The BBC reported that hairs collected in the remote Garo Hills area of northeast India by passionate Yeti enthusiast Dipu Marak were analysed at Oxford Brookes University in the United Kingdom on the 25th of July 2008. The study was conducted by microscopy expert John Wells and primatologist Anna Nokoris, who found the results to be inconclusive. Ape conservationist expert Ian Redmond, in an interview with the BBC, noted a similarity between the cuticle pattern of these hairs and specimens collected by Edmund Hillary during Himalayan expeditions in the 1950s. Redmond's examination revealed that the hair came from a mammal called the Himalayan goral, a member of the cattle family. At a 2011 conference in Russia, Yeti enthusiasts and scientists claimed to have 95% evidence of the Yeti's existence. However, American anatomist and anthropologist Jeffrey Meldrum, who was present during the Russian expedition, dismissed the evidence as an attempt by local officials to gain publicity. In December 2011, reports emerged of a Yeti being captured in Russia. The story revolved around a hunter who witnessed a bear-like creature attempting to attack one of his sheep. After the hunter fired his gun at the animal, it fled into the forest on 2 legs. The story further claimed that Border Patrol soldiers captured a hair-covered 2-legged female creature resembling a gorilla. However, As with many claims, it was later revealed to be fake.
It is quite interesting to ponder why numerous individuals have made such claims throughout the years. Some individuals do it for the notoriety because it makes them feel special, that they are one of the few people who've seen Bigfoot. Suddenly, people find them more interesting, when before maybe they did not. They may find themselves get invited onto YouTube channels and get asked if they'd like to take part in documentaries, sometimes for the privilege and sometimes for the money. So there is definitely a commercial reason to make such a story up. There are many, however, that are simply misidentifications. One of the main theories about what Bigfoot is the bear theory. The idea that a person can see a grizzly bear and haven't seen it, think it is Bigfoot. The reason many think this is a viable theory is that grizzly bears can stand on 2 feet. They have hairs that are the same colour as many Bigfoot sightings suggest, and they make noises similar to what Bigfoot noises are reported to be. Now obviously, a bear's face is rather different from what a Bigfoot face is reported to be like. What with those who claim to have seen Bigfoot saying that the face is either ape-like, human-like, or somewhere in between. But in a situation of heightened tension, when many people would feel when they see a grizzly bear standing aggressively on 2 feet at about 8 foot tall, and with a shadow or perhaps some tree branches obscuring the vision, it would not take much to come to the conclusion that it is Bigfoot that you are seeing.
This misidentification of Himalayan wildlife has been put forward as a plausible explanation for certain Yeti sightings. This misidentification has included langur monkeys living at lower altitudes, known as the tuti, the Himalayan brown bear, the Tibet and blue bear, and the zuta, also known as the Himalayan red bear. In 1986, Reinhold Messner, a mountaineer from South Tyrol, claimed to have had a face-to-face encounter with a Yeti. In his book, My Quest for the Yeti, Messner also asserts that he has killed one. However, upon examining the body, Messner concluded that the Yeti he encountered was actually the carcass of an endangered Himalayan brown bear. There is also the possibility that the term Yeti itself is a misinterpretation. In 2003, Dr. Makoto Nebuka, a Japanese mountaineer and researcher, published the results of his 12-year linguistic study, suggesting that the word Yeti is a corruption of the word Meti, which is Tibetan regional dialect for a bear. According to Nebuka, ethnic Tibetans both fear and worship bears as supernatural beings. However, these claims faced immediate criticisms, with Nebuka being accused of linguistic carelessness. Dr. Raj Kumar Pandey, who has conducted research on Yetis and mountain languages, argued that it is not sufficient to attribute tales of the mysterious beast of the Himalayas to words that rhyme but have different meanings. Similar to the Sasquatch, some believe that these creatures could be present-day specimens of the extinct ape Gigantopithecus. However, Bigfoot is typically described as being bipedal, while the majority of scientists believe that Gigantopithecus was quadrupedal. The extinct giant ape, which no longer exists, was so massive that walking upright as a bipedal ape would have been extremely difficult if it hadn't specifically evolved for it. It was even more complicated than it was for its living relative, the orangutan, which walks on all fours. In 2013, scientists from the University of Oxford and Lausanne requested samples from people who claimed to have evidence of these creatures. Hair samples from an unidentified creature in the northern India region of Ladakh, west of the Himalayas, as well as an unidentified hair sample from Bhutan, underwent mitochondrial DNA analysis of the 12S RNA gene. These samples were then compared to those stored in the International Repository of Gene Sequences, otherwise known as GenBank. Interestingly, they matched a sample from an ancient polar bear jawbone found in Norway, dating back to between 40,000 and 120,000 years ago. This suggests that, excluding possibilities of planted samples, contaminated materials, or hoaxes, bears living in these regions have been mistaken for or misidentified as Yetis. Professor Bill Amos, an evolutionary genetics expert at the University of Cambridge, expressed doubt that the samples were from polar bears in the Himalayas, but he was 90% convinced that there is a bear species in these regions that has been mistaken for a Yeti. Ultimately, it is believed that DNA analysis holds the key to accurately identifying Bigfoot or the Yeti. However, Professor Brian Sykes, whose team analysed the samples at Oxford University, has his own theory. Sykes argues that it is more likely that the samples came from a hybrid species of bear, possibly the result of a polar bear and a brown bear mating. In 2015, further research on the 12S RNA gene revealed that many of the collected hair samples, which were previously unidentified, actually came from brown bears. In 2017, a new analysis compared the DNA sequences of bears from the region with DNA extracted from hair and other samples claimed to be from a Yeti. The study involved hair believed to originate from the same preserved specimen as the unusual Sykes sample. It revealed that the sample derived from a Himalayan brown bear. Other samples were analysed, and tests showed that these came from the Asiatic black bear, the Tibet and blue bear, and even a domestic dog. In 2017, Daniel C. Taylor, an American scholar and advocate for social change, published a comprehensive analysis of the century-long literature on the subject. Taylor's study provided additional evidence to support the explanation, building upon the initial discoveries in the Barren Valley. Significantly, Taylor's book, which was published under the Oxford University imprint, offered a detailed explanation for the iconic Yeti footprints captured by Eric Shipton in 1950 and all other unexplained Yeti footprints. To further support this explanation, Taylor also uncovered a previously unpublished photograph in the archives of the Royal Geographical Society, taken by Eric Shipton in 1950, which displays scratches resembling bare nail marks. Despite all the sightings and other evidence and accounts, the scientific community still cannot decipher conclusively if this creature exists or not. Yet despite this, the legend of Bigfoot stands as a testament to the enduring allure of the unknown and the human thirst for discovery. Whether Bigfoot exists as a flesh and blood creature or as a product of our collective imagination, its legacy resonates across cultures and generations, reminding us of the profound mysteries that still await exploration in the wilds of our world. As we continue to grapple with questions of belief, skepticism, and the boundaries of scientific inquiry, the enigma of Bigfoot serves as a reminder that some truths may forever remain elusive, concealed within the shadows of ancient forests and the depth of our consciousness. Yet it is in the pursuit of these mysteries that we find meaning and inspiration, forging a connection with the untamed beauty of the natural world and the limitless possibilities that lie beyond the confines of our understanding. Whether Bigfoot roams the wilderness or resides solely in the realms of myth, its legend endures as a testament to the enduring power of wonder and the boundless horizons of human curiosity.